Hi there, my name is Kane Smee. My topic is pulling over for emergency response vehicles, and my age group is young drivers, so older adolescents. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kane Smee. I do work with the Central York Fire Services. I am a fire educator, and I have been in this position for the last year or so. I am excited to get to meet all of you guys today and discuss pulling over for emergency response vehicles. Since we all are new drivers, whether we've been on the road or not, it's very important that we understand how this works and that we do comply. So before we get started, I just want to go over a little bit of a safety debriefing. In case of a fire today, we do have our nearest fire alarm. It is located right here. Okay, we do have our nearest fire extinguisher located in the glass case as well here towards the front of the classroom and through this doorway over here. Okay, so once we exit the room, you can see the doorway just outside of the classroom. We are going to head down that staircase, not running, walking. You'll notice there's an emergency exit at the bottom of the stairs, has about a half-foot drop before you step outside, so just a safety consideration. Please mind your step there. Again, walking and minding your step on your way to the back field as we wait for emergency responders if needed. Okay, now just to get started here, let's talk about what an emergency response is. So as per our text that we all do have, an emergency response can be classified as an event that does require well-trained and adequately staffed emergency response teams that are required to provide assistance when necessary. Okay, so just keep that in mind as we work through this today. Okay, so our learning objectives for today's lesson. Today we're going to be able to list different types of emergency response vehicles. We're going to know how to appropriately react to emergency response vehicles when approaching a situation using the RUDE method. And we're also going to acknowledge the consequences for not complying with these rules on the road, as there are some penalties and fines that come with them. Okay, so just some examples of some emergency responses that I've thrown together here. You can have a roadside vehicle fire, it could be a motor vehicle accident, a commercial building fire. You can see that there's a few other ones up there. Just want to give you guys an idea of what an example of some emergency responses are, which I'm sure you're familiar with. Now, to get started here, we're going to just work with our elbow partners at the table. We're going to discuss some examples of emergency response vehicles that we may see while we're out on the road. Great work. I did hear some great discussion as I was walking around. Now you're going to be working with your table groups. You'll notice that you each have an envelope on your table that says emergency versus non-emergency response vehicles. What I'd like to ask you to do now is work with your table groups and sort them, what you believe is emergency response vehicles and which aren't emergency response vehicles. All right, so we'll just stop the small group discussions now. As I was circulating, I did notice that some groups were having some good discussions going on there. Megan, I did notice your group in particular, as you and your friend Cheryl there, as you were sorting through the different pictures. I noticed that you did place the Domino's delivery vehicle on the emergency response side. Now, I just want to ask, is there a reason why you put it in that category?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes a girl just needs her pizza and it's truly an emergency for me.
Okay, now I do understand that there. Maybe sometimes you go out with your friends on the weekend, you come home late at night, you're expecting leftovers from your parents, there's nothing there, so it might be a bit of an emergency, you gotta call Domino's, get a pizza there. I get that, but we're talking about a serious emergency response here, so it's kind of the time where we gotta put joking aside. I would classify as a Domino's delivery pizza car. I would put that in the non-emergency response side. So, on to the next slide here. This is kind of what it should look like when you sort your vehicles. So just take a look at what you have out on your tables right now. If it does match up with this, great. If it does not exactly, just make the changes where necessary. Because again, these are your emergency response vehicles. These are your not emergency response vehicles. Okay? All right, so let's work on how to actually identify an emergency response vehicle. So I just had you roughly try and do so yourselves without discussing it before. Just again, want to see your general knowledge, see where you can apply that. Now, every day, police, fire, any emergency personnel, they're responsible for responding to urgent calls. As drivers, as young drivers especially, it's essential to know how to react appropriately so we can assist them. We don't want to cause any loss of time because this can be the result between life and death. Okay? Now, examples of these types of vehicles, we did just discuss that there, so I won't touch on that again. Each of these vehicles, though, they present different ways of notifying drivers that they're on route to an emergency. Okay, so some may be similar, some may differ. It's our job as drivers to know the difference. Okay, so moving forward, police vehicles, right? We all know what a police vehicle looks like. It could be a motorcycle, car, SUV, or truck. They typically use red and blue flashing lights or a siren or horn to notify us that they're en route to an emergency. Okay? Fire response vehicles. Okay, so typically this does entail a fire truck, which you can see as I have pictured here. They use red flashing lights, and again, as you can probably recall from either even like today or recently or your childhood, they also use a very loud audible horn or siren as well, just to let you know the severity of the situation and that they need you to move out of the way. Okay, medical response vehicles. In this situation, we typically envision an ambulance, which is why we see that picture here. Again, similar to fire trucks, they use red flashing lights as well, and they also use a siren or horn to notify when they're en route to an emergency as well. Now, something a little bit different that we may not see all the time out on the road, or we may not be familiar with, is a volunteer emergency response vehicle. Now, a volunteer responder, it may be a firefighter or another trained medical personnel, but they do use a flashing green light. As you can see here, it's an unmarked truck. How are you going to know that it's a police officer or a firefighter en route to an emergency? So that's where they use the flashing green light to let you know. And again, they may have a horn or a siren as well, but typically you just want to use the flashing green light as a good gauge for that. Okay, so reacting to an approaching emergency vehicle. Great, so we know how to identify it. It's coming our direction. What do we do now as a driver? Okay, so as a driver, like I said, it's your responsibility to assist in saving lives where possible. So we're going to discuss how to do so, because depending on your location, it may vary. Okay, so first we'll look at multi-lane highways. A general rule of thumb, you always want to slow down, signal, and move to the right where you can. So you'll see those will be applicable all the way through. If possible, pull as close as you can to the right side of the roadway and come to a complete stop. Make sure that you're not blocking the shoulder. Okay, 2-lane roads, same thing, slow down, signal, pull to the right. You can see there's a kind of a theme developing here. And if, again, pull as close to the right as possible, do not block any shoulders. Again, that may be a way emergency responders have to get through, and you do not want to block the intersection because, again, we don't know which direction they're heading. We need to make sure that they can move freely where they need to. Okay, one-way street. This one I find a little bit interesting. You can pull either to the right or the left, but again, since all traffic flows moving in one direction, slow down and signal, but make sure you give enough space for the emergency responders to move by. Okay, and again, same thing. No intersections want to be blocked during this time. Okay, in an intersection, a little bit different. Traffic's got to yield in all directions. Again, you want to leave the whole intersection open to allow for free range of travel. Okay, we want to, so like I just mentioned, we want to ensure that it's clear of traffic. And again, if you're in the middle of an intersection as an emergency responder is coming, let's say you're making a left-hand turn, for example, you want to signal away from the left-hand turn, proceed straight through the intersection, and then pull over to the right where it's safe to do so. Okay, so sometimes the emergency responders are coming towards us. Sometimes we approach the situation ourselves head on. So in this situation, we'll kind of focus on a tow truck. But again, if an emergency vehicle or a tow truck is sitting with its lights flashing and stopped, let's say it's a roadside pullover even for the police, you want to make sure that if it's 2 lanes or more, you're providing an adequate space. So let's leave a lane between them in traffic, again, giving them enough space to operate. So where applicable, just try and leave them as much space and proceed very cautiously through the area. Okay, so this is a frequently asked question here, and Megan actually asked it prior. So Megan, can I just have you ask that one more time?
Yeah, so I was just wondering, how am I going to remember how to respond correctly in every situation?
Exactly. So again, you might be flustered at the moment. It's an emergency response. You want to react quickly. Now, I put together an acronym. It's going to help you to remember how to react in certain situations. We call it how to be a rude driver. So not R-U-D-E, but R-E-W-D. Now, the R, we use it for reacting quickly, but calmly. Okay, so again, we got to be quick, get out of the way, but we got to do so in a manner that's not going to put ourselves or anybody else in danger as well. Now, the E, Eyes to mirrors. Check. Are there any emergency response vehicles coming? Am I blocking an intersection? Am I blocking any sort of roadway or the shoulder? Okay, the W, this is once the emergency vehicle is passed, you want to give them at least 150 meters. So wait 150 to be safe, 200 meters, let them pass, and then merge back into traffic as you see appropriate. Okay, and D, like we keep mentioning, do not drive or block shoulders and intersections. Again, we have to let these emergency responders move freely. Okay, now, what if I'm not a rude driver and I decide, maybe I'm just gonna follow this ambulance. We're sitting in a bit of a traffic jam here. I might be able to pass everybody right now. Well, there are some fines and some penalties that come along with that. So for your first offense, you're looking somewhere between $400 to $2,000 for not pulling over safely. So that's quite expensive for just not pulling over to the side. You could also get hit with 3 demerit points and a potential license suspension for up to 2 years. Okay, now a subsequent offense, so that's within 5 years of your first time committing that offense, you're looking at $1,000 to $4,000, 3 demerit points, potential jail time, and you could still be looking at losing your license for up to 2 years as well. Okay, so just to summarize, I don't want to give you all the answers here. We've touched on a bit of different information. I've got an exit card here for everybody to complete. So everybody will get one of these around the room. It's going to touch on all of our learning goals that we covered today. So we're going to be able to identify some emergency response vehicles. So we're just looking for 2. I believe we touched on about 5 or 6. Okay. Name 1 potential penalty for your first offense of not complying with the rules of the road. And then we're going to try and complete the acronym below here as well for being a rude driver. Okay. Again, make sure your name's on it. We'll collect those at the end. It just helps me kind of get a general knowledge of where you guys are sitting after the presentation and if I'm doing my job correctly as well. So I do just want to thank you guys all again today for your time, and I look forward to you guys becoming safe drivers in the future.